We're very glad to see you here today. We hope we will have lots of questions from you. We're also glad to see the people online, and we hope we'll have lots of questions from you too. So please make it as interactive as we can. The way it's going to work is that there will be a presentation from each of the journals first, just to set out some of the basic things about our remit and what we're looking for that we always get asked about. Then we will have a Q&A, which will be, you can ask questions of specific people or specific journals, or things that cover both the journals. We will facilitate that process. If you are online and you want to ask a question, there is a live Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can use that to feed a question in, and we'll be interspersing face-to-face questions with online questions as they come up. One thing I have to say is I actually have to apologize that I'm going to be leaving early because I have to go and present a paper in a symposium in a different building. So we will be kind of tag teaming the facilitation for this, and I'll be handing it over to Paul at a later date. But what I will do before I do that is to introduce the two presentations and then just open up the Q&A. So without further ado, BGM is going first. So Paul, if I can invite you to come up and tell us everything you know. In 12 minutes.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you all here today and those of you joining us online. It's my pleasure to introduce the British Journal of Management on behalf of myself and my fellow co-editors-in-chief, Rika Sarala and Shuang Ren, who are here with us and will join in the panel questions. So about the British Journal of Management, it's a highly prestigious journal, impact factor 5.6, shifting around the impact factors a bit this year as Clarivate's methodology settles down. We think that will go back up again next year. CAB's ranking 4, ABDC ranking A, and a growing trend of downloads and attention to the journal over time. We have, as I mentioned already, 3 co-editors-in-chief, myself, Rika and Shuang, who you'll meet in a short while, a team of 15 associate editors and a specialist in communications, and board members from 26 countries, and our managing editor, Emma Misson, who can't be with us today, unfortunately, who holds the whole operation together for us. So we're very grateful for Emma's great work for the journal. Our associate editors cover a vast range of topics and territories too. I'm not going to read through all their details one by one here, but just to show you on screen, and you have the chance to get hold of the downloadable slides later on through the website. But this is just a sample of the broad range of people we have helping to make the journal the great leading international outlet that it is. So what is BJM's purpose and mission? It's for research and scholarship on management-related themes and topics. And the kinds of articles we publish are of a wide range of types. Traditional disciplinary scholarship you'd recognize perhaps from your specialist part of the field, or maybe something that's more multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary in nature, but everything has to be internationally significant. We want something that can be picked up, used, and make a difference to theoretical and practical conversations around the world. And the disciplines we include are listed there. I think, again, it wouldn't be very good of me to read through all those in detail, but I think you can probably find yourself there, I hope. If you can't find yourself there, write to me and tell me why not. Let's see what we can do about that. It should be an inclusive space for all members of the British Academy and those without who see the prominence of the journal and are interested in contributing to our conversations. The process of submission is straightforward and something probably everyone in this room is familiar with, using Manuscript Central. We had 935 manuscripts submitted last year. We're forecast to go over 1,000 for the first time this year, so we receive a lot of attention. Acceptance rate is 12%. That was a bit high last year. I think that's going to be lower this year. So there's a serious process of peer review. Desk reject rate is relatively high. It might be a little higher than 57% this year as well. Don't be frightened by those kinds of numbers, though. Desk rejects are often for reasons of fit with the field, or for technical issues that could be fit on the way to another outlet, but you'll get some advice about desk reject that happens, but it happens to everyone. I've had desk rejects, probably everyone on the panel has. They might not admit to it, but I bet they have. So don't worry about those rates too much, but get to know the journal so you can craft your work to fit well so it has the best chance of progressing. We get attention from around the world in our submissions, not just from the readers, as you can see, Europe, Asia, North America, South America, Australia, and Africa, all submitting. And we're very keen to continue that globalization trend in the attention to and submissions to the journal. What kinds of articles might you be submitting to BJM? The classic types are these kinds of articles. Empirical articles are the most common submission type, any area within the journal's aims and scope, and they can be qualitative or quantitative, whichever methodological approach you like to use. Conceptual articles address any area within the journal's aims and scope as well. I'm going to give you a qualification about the kinds of conceptual articles we look at later on, because IJMR covers a lot of that territory. And then methodology corner articles are accounts of methodological developments that can make a difference to how we go about our research towards education. So maybe you learned something about the nature of leadership, which means we should teach it differently, for example. Education theory articles are pedagogic research, more or less, or other conceptualization of education theory. And so they're going to be based on research within management education context. That's where your sample is, and have clear theoretical and practical contributions to how we go about the practice of the scholarship of teaching and learning in our daily lives as educators. A really interesting and different article type for BJM, the previous two being very similar to existing article types. A very different type is the management educator article. These are essay forms that make speculative contributions to disciplinary education theory. You're going to be a little bit more provocative with those kinds of outputs. So they're going to shake things up a little bit, but they must also be, for our journal, personally relevant to the author. This is hot motivation. You have a connection or a driver to the issue that you're trying to engage with. So it makes a difference to you in practice to sort out these issues, as well as for the rest of us. So that's a quick example of those. You find out more details of all the article types I've been through quickly on the website, which will give you the details you need. What we're looking for then in our articles are these kinds of things. For empirical contributions, novel contributions and convincing data, they've got to match up. And the contribution needs to go beyond the incremental. That's often a frequent reason for some desks to reject. The contribution is a little bit small, so something that really extends the debate in the field that shows how you are adding to or challenging the theoretical debate. So you'd be making contributions that take a different view from existing theories in the field. Any methodology is fine as long as it's implemented the highest current standard. You could be going from autoethnography to structural equation modeling and everything in between, as long as you do it to the highest current standards. The maximum word length for a typical manuscript of that type has been 6,000 words, but you can have longer if there's good reason for it, 8,000 words. Realistically, most people ask for extra words in their submissions for this type. If you're going to do that, please explain it in your cover letter. We're more likely to be friendly to that if it's explained to us in the cover letter, which is important. In terms of conceptual articles, again, these can fit any area of our field, but they must have a deductive logic and use a propositional model. That's because that's the kind of contribution we're looking for, and also it's the kind of contribution IJMR is not looking for. They will give you a detailed explanation of the really interesting types of contribution you make to their journal, but for us, conceptual work must take that form. The limit for that kind of article is 6,000 words exclusive of references and tables and figures and so on. No exceptions, because you have no methodology. You should be able to get your articulation of your main ideas really tight. In terms of MKE essays, they take the same kind of word limit as the conceptual articles, must be personally relevant research, and a clear speculative theoretical contribution, be a little more edgy and on the boundaries here, and develop new research questions. Methodology types, the main criteria is that the paper presents a new contribution to our understanding in our practice of methodology within our field. And there's some examples here you can follow up through downloading the slides later on. We do have a lot of special issues. I'm not going to go through those in detail. Again, they'll be there for you to look at later on, but remind you we have a call for special issue proposals that's coming out later this month. So look out for that online. It specifies exactly what you need to do to seek to publish a special issue with our journal, and the deadline for submission of that will be the 1st of December of this year. So look out for that online. I want to go through some characteristics of rejected and successful papers now very briefly to end this rather short presentation. So what are the limits of rejected papers? The first one typically is a weak theoretical contribution. There is some good empirical material, there's an articulation of the findings and what they show descriptively, but it doesn't really take that through to engage with theoretical debate, show us which authors you're engaging with, challenging or adding to. Or the focus is too narrow. If you have a paper that's talking about, let's say, innovative entrepreneurial companies, and you pick a small region in Scotland. I'll pick on Scotland because that's where I live. That just seems random. Well, why do you do that? Why don't you pick something that's a larger sample and more relevant? Or if you can have a focused sample about entrepreneurial innovative companies, pick Boston. So you think about the relevance of your particular sample. Don't take a prescriptive approach. There's got to be some kind of reflexive thought around how we develop ideas for managers to work with. There must be that relevance to management to our field. You've got a wide range of disciplines through which to make that contribution, but it must have some practical relevance to them too. If the methodology is not well described, especially quantitative methodologies, it's hard to see that the data are robust. Out-of-date referencing, you're not at the forefront of the field, you're likely to be incremental if that's the case. Or if you send us review papers, IJMR welcomes your review paper with open arms, at least at the first instance. They'll tell you what's wrong with it if they don't, but that's the place to go with your review papers. A publishable paper fits with the journal's missions and scope, addresses why and how questions, not just what, so it goes beyond the descriptive, offers a useful and novel contribution, more than that descriptive take, shows good evidence of knowledge of relevant literatures and is up to date with those literatures, is trying to be at the forefront of the conversation, shows methodological robustness of whatever type you are, so that the methods must be the best of your type. And there are logical and clear connections that take us from theory, data, finds, and discussion, so you have an integrated narrative and the whole thing hangs together. So there's some quick pointers. You'll have a chance to explore those in the questions later. And there's some details that you can find on these slides that are downloadable. But I'd like to turn over now to IJMR, who are going to take you through the interesting points of their journal.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was great. And thank you also for reminding people that I forgot to say the slides will be available on the BAM website after the conference. So, you know I've seen one or two of you taking the odd photograph, but they will be there for reference if you need them after the event. So, Jamie, I know you're just getting your laptop up. Are you ready? Okay, so Jamie's going to talk to you about IJMR.
Hi, it's lovely to be here. Paul gave a great introduction with BJM and Marion has introduced us. I want to share a little bit about what we do at IJMR, the International Journal of Management Reviews. The three co-editors-in-chief are here. That's me, Jamie Callahan, Marion Isaac-White, and also Joaquin Alegre. Our journal was launched in 1999. It was the first journal dedicated to fully having management reviews only. So it's the first reviews journal in our field. We publish 4 issues, January, April, July, and October. Our latest 2-year impact factor is 8.1, and you can see the rankings and what our 5-year impact factor are, and those kinds of details are on the website. We've increasingly had higher and higher downloads of the journal and journal articles, and very often that happens because people are interested in reviews. They want to see what's happening in the field, and it gives a good overview for what is going on. In 2022, we had almost 700,000 articles. And if you want to see what's happening, because we do publish a wide variety of any different kinds of topics associated with management as a field. That includes marketing, it includes accounting, it includes finance, economic kinds of issues. One recent article that came out that surprised me, that I was fascinated by reading, was on accounting. I'm a management person, so we have lots of really interesting articles that come out, and I encourage you to click on Get New Content and keep up with us. So what makes us distinct? This is a question that happens frequently. One of the things that you'll note very quickly is that we only publish reviews. We don't publish empirical papers, and indeed, that's one of the main reasons why articles get desk rejected at IJMR. We have several different reasons why we desk reject papers. I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself right now, but we have about a 74% rejection rate, desk rejection rate, and that does seem high. But usually the reasons why articles get desk rejected are, number one, they come in as an empirical paper. Number two, they don't have a methodology section, and this is where a lot of people get confused. We are a reviews journal, but we want to see the method that you used to conduct your review. That moves on a little bit later. We're methodologically agnostic. We'll take narrative reviews, systematic reviews, bibliometrics, meta-analyses. We'll take any kind of review just as long as you tell us how you did your review. The next reason why we often get desk rejects is around the issue of conceptual contribution. There has to be some sort of theoretical or conceptual contribution to the literature. And I'll describe a little bit more about that shortly. We don't publish reviews that fail to do that. We also encourage interdisciplinarity. And one of the areas that I'll share with you is a graph that one of our former editors, two of our former editors came up with that describes a little bit more about what a conceptual contribution can look like. The aims and scope of our journal, papers published in IJMR are really looking to have that strategic platform for those new directions in research. And by strategic platform for new directions, we're not talking about future research directions. Yes, we want to see those, but just listing future research directions is not sufficient for showing that you have a conceptual or theoretical contribution to the literature. We want to see how your work shows something different about the field. It changes the nature of the conversation around the field. It shows us how you might refine the way we think about the field or add to the way we think about the field that you're looking at. The state of that knowledge in the given field really needs to be critically evaluated and show what the conceptual underpinnings of the different competing paradigms are. So you really want to show how you are taking a different look at the field, not just describing and categorizing, but how is what you're doing advancing our understanding. This is that graph I talked about in terms of the way that we see different kinds of theorizing through literature reviews. This is from the Minor and Prospector article that Dermot Breslin and Caroline Gatrell, two former editors of IJMR, wrote. At the top, spotting conceptual gaps, organizing, categorizing literatures. At some point in the history of IJMR, those would have been sufficient for getting published in the journal, but no longer. We're moving more from that minor perspective at the top to more of the prospector perspective at the bottom. So looking across domains, developing different kinds of analogies or metaphors across those domains, blending and merging literatures, pulling in those interdisciplinary kind of focus points that you might find, setting out new and different kinds of narratives. So really looking at what is different and how are we advancing this field. If you're just categorizing, that normally is not going to be sufficient. No, I said normally. That's not going to be sufficient to get published in IJMR. That is one of the areas where bibliometric and meta-analyses kinds of reviews sometimes get in trouble. And I'll describe that a little bit more later, but you need to go beyond just the fancy graphs and the interesting data that you're pulling out and tell us more of the story behind what makes what you're doing important. So some top tips for delivering those innovative conceptual contributions. A lot of times that domain maturity is a determinant of what really is an innovation. So if you have a relatively emerging field, then you might not have quite enough of a robustness in the literature that's been published to show that you're coming up with something new out of the literature. So how long have we been talking about this topic? To give you an example of something that might be new but might have grounding in previous literature, you might think of something around the ideas of AI that's coming out right now. There might not be enough literature on AI specifically, but if you look at the background of how do we get to that point, digitization and all the different concepts around technology and how that influences the field, and moving into that, that could be a way that you could have a paper on that topic and build on previous reviews that research that's out there. Using graphics. This is where the meta-analyses and bibliometrics kind of get stuck. Graphics are great, but you need to embed it into the literature, into the narrative that's telling us why it's important. So just for example, telling us all the different countries that a journal, topics have been written on in that particular area isn't going to be enough unless you've connected it to why is that important. So we've got a gender breakdown of the authors. Why is that important? We've got how many over the years. What do the years tell us? Give us more information on the graphics that you're sharing. An innovative methodology is not an end in itself. So just the other day, I was talking to someone who presented a really interesting paper, used the idea of critical discourse analysis, but hadn't framed it as a review. And I thought, oh, this actually could be a review. So critical discourse analysis is an interesting methodology, but if you stuck with that and just on that, it wouldn't necessarily add. So we want to see innovative methodologies beyond just the standard review of literature, but you have to connect that and show us why it's important. Often using a theoretical lens to generate, was that 3? To generate a conceptual contribution is another really important way of building onto the literature and showing us what your conceptual contribution is. And creativity, pushing beyond the obvious. We want not the incremental changes, but we want to see larger changes and more grand changes in what you see the literature is taking us forward. And I went into rush. I'm going to go back, spend a little bit more time talking on that because I have 3 minutes left. But what we're really looking for is the idea that you are advancing literature, you've done something rigorous in terms of how you're reviewing the literature, and then you're telling us a story about what the literature can bring to us. And so with that, if you're interested in finding out some examples of what those really good leading articles are that we publish, we encourage you to go to our most recent editorial. We call it our Desert Island Discs editorial. And what we did was we asked our associate editors to share with us over the last 5 years what they considered to be the most important articles that they had worked with or that they had read in the journal. So each of our AEs sent in different articles. We selected some that were either mentioned by multiple or that we felt were the best representations. And we published stories about each one of those and told why they really were exemplars of a good publication. So with that, we encourage you to go to our website. We also encourage people, if you're interested in reviewing for us, give us a shout. If you're interested in submitting an article, we welcome any article from any different topics. We see a lot of PhD students publishing in the journal and early career researchers because you are closely related or closely in tune with the literature and the cutting edge literature based on the work you're doing right now. So with that, we'll open up for questions for the team. I'll turn it back over to Paul.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you all for coming again. The way we're going to operate questions is in the classic sense in the room. If you please raise your hand if you have a question. Don't speak until somebody with a microphone arrives to help you connect your question with the panel, which I'll then direct to appropriate person. So we have a first question just here. Thank you.
Okay, hello. I would like to ask you. All right. Okay, so I would like to ask you, what do you consider an acceptable sample for your journal in relation to quantitative research?
Okay, so we think about quantitative research and an acceptable sample. I think that's a question for BJM. So I'll ask one of my co-editors to offer a response on that one.
Thank you. That's a very important question. And my answer would be that it depends. Because it's hard for me to give you a distinct figure, but I would say, of course, if you're working on financial data, then we're probably looking for larger samples than if you're working with survey data. For survey, as a survey researcher myself, I would say that probably if you have less than 100, it's quite difficult to work with that data. But that being said, the more you have, then the more likely you're able to see more significant results. But I would say if it's less than 100, then you would have to be very careful and definitely also use a methodology that's appropriate for the size of that data.
Basically, I was asking that because we had, let's say, a misunderstanding with my colleague. The paper that we presented here, it consisted 329 respondents. So I told him why we shouldn't give it a shot and for the British Journal, for your journal. And he immediately said, no, there isn't any chance. It must be above 500. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask about it. So thank you so much for clarifying it. That, meaning that 500 respondents would be the minimum to accept for your journal. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Always good to answer a question in a positive way. Do we have more questions, please, from the audience?
Thank you, presenters. On this issue, for this, the only acceptable journal that you accept as per IJ, if I'm wrong, please, IJMR, is only based on a systematic review, mostly, right?
Is that the question?
Not only that. Is it based on a systematic review, the one that only involve a critical review?
Okay. We definitely are not limiting ourselves to systematic reviews.
Okay.
We are happy with any kind of review methodology. Narrative, integrative, systematic, also bibliometric and meta-analysis, although sometimes they are too descriptive. But as long as there is a methodology explaining how you have conducted your review, we are happy with any methodology. Okay. What we would say is look at what you're trying to do and how mature the field is, and decide which kind of methodology is most suitable. So if it is an emergent field, it's more likely you might be doing a narrative rather than a systematic. If you're looking at things that go across disciplines, it's more likely that you might be doing integrative. So choose the right methodology for what you do, but we are definitely open to all of them.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Okay. You only assess the level of understanding of the writers and see how he was able to provide a succinct answer to the gap the person identified by going through all those literature during his own review, right?
So yes, we're looking for a rationale as to why you've chosen the time.
Why, how, what? Yeah.
And then we're looking for a description that tells us how that review has been undertaken in order to show that it has been done robustly.
In a robust form. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your question. We welcome that. There's a question here. Just wait for the microphone to come, please. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question on the review? Yeah, IJMR. For the emerging field, we want to develop the conceptual from the empirical. And what we did is that we did empirical review in systematic way of the empirical paper. Does it consider as a rigorous enough? Because we only use a conceptual paper as the framework, as a background for us to develop the concept further. And we back up with our conceptual framework with the empirical evidence that we review from the private research. Is that kind of methodology, is any drawback in that? Yeah.
I understood. Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
You are asking about the conceptual contribution of the paper after a literature review.
Yeah.
Right? So we are something we're emphasizing a lot is that once you have done a hard work, such as doing a literature review, it's important to be more ambitious, to do a bit more of effort and find higher implications. Basically in terms of developing a concept, a new concept, perhaps based on a previous concept or totally new concept, or connecting this to literature and doing a theoretical development. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Paul, can I just add one?
Please.
I think part of what you were asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is whether it would be acceptable to have an empirical exemplar. No. That's not what we do. We're not interested in the empirical exemplar. We are interested in a review, which if it's a meta-analysis might include an empirical review, but it's the conceptual contribution, not an empirical exemplar that we're looking for. Just to clarify.
Thank you so much for the interesting questions. I'm just going to check if anyone else has a question first before we come back to you. A question over here, and then we'll come back to you next, okay?
Hello? Yeah. Could you please, for BJM, could you please say a little bit more about the education track? There's 2 different tracks of paper there, but I didn't quite, three. Is it possible just to say a bit more about what you're hoping to get submitted into those streams?
Would you like me to do that? My colleagues have asked me to respond to that one, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. We're looking for those 3, they're 3 distinct article types, basically. So the most obvious one is is the pedagogical research. So research you might do in a classroom that develops new pedagogic theory or extends or challenges pedagogic theory. You're working with a student sample, let's say, and generating data that way. Another type is a management theory article, and that's where you have a contribution to disciplinary theory that you might see in other parts of the journal, but the practical implications are very much about what we must do in our teaching that's different following on from that. So one of the exemplar papers that we have been coming through that we had from the symposium on Friday looks at how teachers are working under extreme contexts through COVID and the way that influences our understanding of extreme contexts and theorizing about that, but also what we must do in our teaching practice in those kinds of events in very practical ways. The third one is an essay form, and that's looking at something that's personally relevant to you as an educator, something that's a burning issue for you, but you've engaged with it theoretically to offer a contribution to debate to take us somewhere different. So a provocation that opens up our thinking and questioning. Does that help with the types? Thank you so much for the question. I think we have a next one waiting here. And then,
all right. Just like I just need more light on some certain factors that limit you accepting some set of journals or literature in your testing. What you mentioned out of date referencing. When you talk about that, are you referring to the years back, or the referencing style? I just need more light on that.
Okay, thank you for the question. That's about the currency of references. It did come from the BJM presentation. Would one of my colleagues like to take that one?
Well, when it comes down to the reference, what we are looking at is not just about the date of your references. I mean, there are a number of factors we would consider. Of course, the first one is whether you refer to the most relevant literature, the seminal work on the topic related to the phenomenon and the study. The second is whether the reference that you refer to is related to your research question and the research methods. So for example, if it is an interdisciplinary approach, does you cover the related ones? Now coming back to the seminal work, sometimes it could be like quite dated, right? So we would expect you to include those seminal work, even though it happened a few years ago. But we would like authors to demonstrate their capabilities of knowing the debate after the seminal work. So what is the latest contribution? Thirdly, I would also like to highlight that we would also like authors to engage with the debate and conversations at BGM. That would demonstrate how you would, how your research would appeal to the general management audience that our journal targets.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. We welcome further questions.
So this question is to both journals. So it's to do with AI. So if you know, in the near future, you use AI in some way in your paper, what are your policies at the moment in terms of how we approach this?
Just an interesting question. Thank you. It's for both journals. And Marion has an answer first of all, and I'll turn to my colleagues at BJM for their contribution. Thank you.
That's actually really interesting and timely, because we had our first paper a few weeks ago that openly acknowledged that they had used ChatGPT to proofread their paper. We actually asked them if they could send us the pre and the post so that we could evaluate what they'd actually done with it, what the implications of that were, so that we can educate ourselves about what it might mean for the journal. We're not there yet. We're still thinking about that. There's a network of journal editors that is actually working on not quite standardized wording, but something that we can give by way of guidance for that. I think for me, the key thing is that we need to be clear that the intellectual legwork has been done by the authors. And if we are clear on that, then we can work with the rest. But we're not yet quite sure what that's going to look like. So work with us on it, be transparent with us, and we'll see where we can get to on it.
Thank Thanks so much. And for my colleagues from BGM, one of you like to add to the...
I'll just add to that, that it's important to be transparent about how the AI was used, and the publisher's view and the view in the field currently is that an AI cannot be an author. So as an author, you are responsible for everything that's in the paper. So you're responsible for all the findings, including anything that was done with the AI. So at the end, you as the author are responsible for all the content of the paper.
Thanks so much. Interesting and helpful question. And we have our next one here, I think. Thank you.
I just want to ask another follow-up questions related to AI and ChatGPT. I'm wondering if you have seen any changes in terms of journal submission types, content, preferences in this year particularly, and what kind of benefits and advantages of using AI for journals, although used ethically in a certain way? Thank you.
That's a question either journal could take, so I'm happy to pass the floor open to anybody who'd like to have a go.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm live now. I think basically you're asking what are the ethical ways that you could use, that we would see as using ChatGPT or other forms of AI. There are a lot of different forms of AI out there that can help with editing your articles. One of the things that my university, Durham University, has a policy that you can use any form of AI to help you with editing your articles, your dissertations, your papers, etc. As long as you're transparent with in our case, it would be the editor. But as long as you're transparent with the person that you're submitting the article to, what and how you've used it. But certainly things like Grammarly, for example, is a form of AI that helps people write and fix the grammar in their articles or their papers. And ChatGPT can do the same thing. I submit that ones that are designed specifically to help you copy edit are probably more effective with that. As I've told my students, you might want to look at Grammarly instead of ChatGPT. But if you were to do it, editing, I think, is an important place to help with that. And this is my personal opinion, and it's not something we've had conversations around. One of the things that I see very frequently is that we tend to privilege those who already speak and write in English well in our journals in English-speaking contexts. And I think that there are lots of good ideas out there that AI can help people put in an English context that is more likely to be received more favorably and more quickly, so that we can see the good ideas. So we don't have policies, but this is, again, my personal opinion, and it's the policy of my institution that AI is allowed as long as you're transparent and as long as you show what and how you've done. So what we've done is asking for the pre and the post. The other thing you can do is if you're using something like ChatGPT, you can tell us what your prompts are. So when you've written a prompt, and this is what I asked of my students, tell us what the prompt is so that we can say, yeah, okay, it's still your intellectual ideas, as Rika was saying. This is still your intellectual ideas, and it's just the smoothness of language or the helping you with the transitions or changing a word here or there that you might have used a word that isn't as effective. So those are the spaces that I see AI can be particularly helpful. Does that answer your question? No.
Did you see any changes in terms of journal submission types, contents, preferences? For instance, whether people tend to write more qualitative papers than empirical papers, etc.?
Well, that might be more for BJM, but from IJMR's perspective, no, we haven't seen a change. As an instructor who marks papers, I have. But from the perspective of the journals, no, for IJMR, we've not seen a difference.
I think I'm just going to say I don't think we have either. No. So it's a good question. But I think summing up the questions on AI, I think we can just say the two things to bear in mind right now are watch out for policy developments. This is something we're all trying to get sharper on and focus about. And be transparent is the main message around all that. So really great set of questions on AI. And we have another question.
Sorry, can I just add? I'm Amanda from Wiley, the publishers. I just wanted to add a general comment on AI and just say it's really interesting to hear the questions about it. And in publishing across all the journals, the standard bodies it's a very fluid area at the moment, the sort of input of ChatGPT and AI. And I would suggest people just keep an eye on the author guidelines because, as I said, it's kind of fluid area where sort of guidelines and policies have been being developed, and there may be some sort of more developments in that field, but at the moment it's more about being transparent.
Thank you. That's really super helpful. Nice to have a voice from the publishers there. I have a question online I'll take, and then I'll come back into the room for the next question. But I have an online question, first of all. It's from our colleagues at IJMR. And is a research paper that proposes a novel theoretical connection between two variables considered suitable for publication in IJMR? You have to verbalize your response, I think, Marion.
Sorry. We can say it in unison.
It could be. I mean,
well, no.
We can say no.
I think we could say IJMR is coming to a consensus on that question. That's probably not a suitable contribution.
Yeah. No.
Would you want to elaborate on that in any depth, or?
Well,
I didn't understand the question. Sorry.
No worries.
Two variables, research on two variables and coming up with ideas around those variables. That screams to me empirical paper. And so I would say if you're looking at how two bodies of literature fit together and doing a review in those two bodies of literature, well then yes, we would welcome something like that. But looking at two variables and how they relate in some form or fashion, no.
Yeah. So that may be implicit behind the question's way of phrasing. They might mean if I do it from a conceptual review purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be accepted. There's the answer. That's the way to do it. Thank you so much,
Indeed.
colleagues from IGM. Are we back in the room now? Do you have a question, please?
My name is Diesel from Kingston University. My question is on the process with regards to submission and publication, what the timeframes are when somebody submits a paper. It might have been covered previously. I came in a bit late. Apologies for that.
I don't think we did cover that because we did our presentations in a briefer format. So would either journal like to give just a rough view of the timings of the review process and so on?
I can start. And this information is available actually in our website. And I can confidently say that we work very hard to make it a very, progress within each stage. So once we receive the submissions, our managing editor would action initial review of the submission, normally within 3 to 1 week, right? And then our managing editor, Emma, would allocate the submissions to one of us, 3 EICs. So we took about a week to make initial decisions whether to reject or assign to the AE team. Now, even at the AE team, our AEs have the could actually reject the submissions at their length. And if the submissions proceed to the review process, we typically have 4 weeks review windows. So this is our pattern.
We'll have a contribution with this.
Ours can be a little bit longer. We have the same amount of time for Emma as our managing editor to allocate articles, to review them, assess them, whether or not they meet the criteria in terms of administrative procedures, and assign them. We have 2 weeks as editors, but we are also human. So I want to raise that as well. For example, I have not had internet access at my new home for 2 weeks. So anybody who's submitted it and has come to me, I apologize now. So there are things happen with our AEs. Generally, roughly, we ask reviewers to get it back within 4 weeks, but it can take longer. Reviewers drop off. We can't find reviewers. Sometimes we've gone through as many as 24 people requesting to get 3 reviewers. So these things can add time, but in general, our review time overall is usually less than 60 days from the start of when this manuscript is submitted to a first decision from the first review.
Thanks so much for that question. How helpful to clear up these process, people. That's very helpful. Do we have another question here? And after that, there's one down here, one up here, and then we'll come back to you. So.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Rebecca from Oxford Brookes University, and I ask as an early career academic, and also I co-lead an early career academic network here at BAM. So, yeah, sorry. So as part of, for both journals, do you hold some workshops and sessions prior to, say, an issue for people then to maybe come together? And also maybe is there some kind of early career academic support, maybe like a mentorship when we're reviewing? So if maybe you're wanting to get into review, maybe you can be with somebody, shadow them, or maybe other initiatives that you do at the journals for early career academics.
So would anybody like to comment on workshops or support for early career academics in general? Thank you.
Yes, certainly for IJMR, we do a number of things. We do these kind of sessions wherever we can. We're happy to come and do them in individual institutions if we get invited, or at conferences. We also run paper development workshops and workshops on developing theory from lit reviews. There's a couple of ways that we do that. Again, if we're invited, we will come and do them in specific institutions, so please invite us. But also, if you have doctoral training partnerships, they often have bodies that will organise training workshops usually for both doctoral students and for ECRs. And again, you know, I think we've all probably done workshops for them and are very happy to do that wherever the opportunity arises. So ask and ye shall receive.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I hope my colleagues will forgive me. I'll just echo, we do similar things. And BJM was involved in 18 events around the world yesterday. Last year? Wow, that was a busy day. Excuse me, I'm slipping. 18 events around the world last year, from PDWs to advice sessions in general. So we do similar things too.
I just have one more thing. We were actually talking in the council meeting yesterday, day before. Next conference, we're going to do a PDW specifically on reviewing, because we think that's one of the ways that you can really improve your own outputs and improve your own skills so that you can look at your own paper more critically. So look out for a PDW next year.
Thank you. Just to add, there's an early career academic network we do. It's a new network just actually created last October. And actually Oxford Brookes right now, I'm organising a reviewing workshop. I've spoken to some people from the peer review college. So I'd love to get in touch to see what we can do there and come to Brookes. We love that. Thank you so much.
We love gigs. Invite us.
Yes. We love Oxford. Invite us.
Thank you so much. We have a next question here, I think.
This question for BJM. So do you reject the paper just simply based on the cover letter that doesn't, discuss, because in BJM the require for cover paper that you need to discuss how the paper enhance and elaborate on the existing literature in BJM. But if the author just fail to address that issue, they just in generic, just cover letter in generic, submit to any journal. Did you reject the paper because of that? Let's reject for that. Yeah.
When we consider the papers at the desk, we always do a review of all the documents. So we look at all the documents that you have submitted. I think the cover letter for you as an author is an opportunity to really highlight the contribution and the novelty and the relevance of your manuscript. So it's an extra opportunity briefly to describe what's novel, what's important, what's relevant in the manuscript, and that way to really attract interest for your work, so that we as editors are, wow, this is really interesting, and then we're even more enthusiastic to carefully read your manuscript. But in sum, we always look at all of the documents.
Thank you. I think we have another question up at the back here.
Hello. I would like to ask if you have noticed a few major universities in India have made prompting GPTs as part of their curriculum in their MBAs. So I think it's very much time that we have to come up with an immediate, like somebody has mentioned, legwork. So if that is there with the journals, it would be good for academics here to set a benchmark for like people in academia, the students who are doing it right now. So I believe we are a bit late when it comes to like with preparing the legwork or the criterions with AI, because more and more AI products are coming to the market in relation with academia and research. So the more we are late, more and more papers will emerge. So without knowing the right criterions, so I hope it will come to the website soon.
I'm just going to jump on that if I may, if my colleagues will let me. Thank you. It reinforces the point we're making very helpfully to say that we do take this very serious in the area of emerging policy and attention, but we've got to do the legwork, as you said. We need to look at things. We can't make snap judgments. We're doing that in many ways. We're also taking advice from other editors around the field. We're developing theoretical approaches to understanding this and what it means, and developing our ethical approaches alongside. There's not any slack in terms of us wanting to engage with that. We're as interested as everyone else is, but it is going to take time. And it's one of those areas, I think, where practice runs ahead of theory. And that's really why we do management research in the first place, because some novel phenomenon runs ahead of us. We need to catch up. You're right, we're catching up, but we are on it. So thank you very much for the comment. Do we have further questions? One question up here. Thank you.
Hi there. I was just wondering about any opportunities to get involved in the journal, for example, in reviewing and stuff, and where we might find them, or whether we can kind of approach and express an interest in reviewing or kind of contributing to either journal in any way.
Thank you so much. Well, I've just taken your name and photograph and you're on the list. So please.
So I'd love to answer that question. You'll see anyone who, I don't have my bet. You'll see any one of us on the True Journals wearing, most of us wearing badges that say, ask me about IJMR or BJM. We welcome people to review. What we ask that you do is, if you don't have a Scholar One account already set up, set one up for yourself. You can go to either our journals and it'll say create an account, so your profile is in the Scholar One system. Then all you need to do is you can reach out to any one of us, or better yet, you can reach out to Emma Misson, who is our managing editor. And what she does, if you're interested in being a reviewer, what she does is she sends out a notice to all of the AEs saying, hey, this person has expressed an interest. Here is their Scholar One profile. So when an article comes up that is in your interest area that they think you would be a good reviewer for, we'll send you something. And one of the reasons why it's so important to become a reviewer is because the pipeline to becoming an editorial board member, an associate editor, and editor-in-chief begins with that reviewer process. One of the ways we at IJMR look at potential consulting editors or our editorial board members is we look at one of our passes is we look at who has been reviewing for us, who's been a good reviewer for us, who's been a timely reviewer for us. And then we look at their areas of subject expertise and does that fit with what we're looking for at the time. And so that's a great way to get into becoming an editor. Or just serving the field, if that isn't an aspiration that you have, just serving the field and getting a sense of what that literature out there is doing and how you might improve your own writing, because one of the things we do is we send back the reviews of all of the anonymous reviewers. So you can say, oh, yeah, that reviewer number 2 wasn't as bad as they have a reputation for. Really good feedback.
Thanks so much, Jamie. I think it probably answers for us as well. So we'll take that as an answer for both journals. We have a question down here. Sorry, we've got a bit of a run. Just please wait for the microphone to arrive. Be with you soon. It's coming this way.
I have one question about the development of British journal management. So I'm wondering whether you have any plans to further enhance the international reputations of the journals, because I think that there is no questions about the reputation of the journal in Europe and in the UK. But I think it is not fair when in a BDC ranking we're still at the A journals. And And I can see in the distribution of the submission that there is only 9% of the submission coming from the North America and 4% coming from Australia. So there is still room to improve the brand awareness in Australia and North America. And I think this matter is really important, especially for the team that including co-authors coming from different countries like Australia and North America. For example, when if I want to suggest British Journal of Management as the starting points, for example, the starting destination, it can have some reluctance from Australian co-authors when they think that it is A, not compared to A-star journals.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Will you forgive me if I answer this one? Thank you. We are very active in networking across Australia and New Zealand, bearing in mind that ABTC rankings doesn't represent the quality of the journal sufficiently. And so I will be, for example, present at the ANZAM conference and presenting for the journal. And we're connecting with various institutions across that region. Shuang actually was based at an Australian institution before, so we have good connections to build on. And also we're active in North America through partnering with other journals at the Academy. Did either of you want to add any specific points to that, or?
Yes, actually, there are 2 points I would like to add. So first of all, so we are international journals, even though we have British in our name. So the way we look at how we could further enhance the global visibility is, of course, through connections, PDWs, it is etc. But also, we really want to encourage submissions which has global significance. So the quality of the papers are very important. So we work very hard with our AE teams and reviewer teams on that one. Secondly, is if we look at the statistics across the board, we have higher submissions from over the years, the submissions from other countries or less developed or representative countries are growing. When you think about where those submissions come from, we only look at the country or region of the submitting authors. We don't really, factor in those other authors. So we wouldn't say we don't attract submissions from America or Australia. In fact, if you look at the author team, probably is more diverse than the data tells us.
Thanks so much, Shuang. Thank you. That concludes the question time that we have, unfortunately. I think that really is the end, bearing in mind people have other sessions to go to. I want to conclude by, first of all, thanking our panelists for their interesting and insightful contributions about the journals. Thanking the people online who joined us remotely to take part in this session. And thank you all for your interest in the journals, your engagement, your contributions, your participation. From all of us, have a great rest of the conference. Thank you very much.